Okay, so this video comes to you with the usual added chihuahua snoring, particularly because it's kind of getting late in the evening. I've spent my entire day digging into the case of Jaden Spicer, who is a 10-year-old boy who's gone missing from Breathitt County, which is in Jackson, Kentucky. He was apparently last seen at around 9 o'clock on Tuesday evening, the 5th of August, and he was reported missing around 9:23 a.m. the following morning, so the 6th of August. He was last seen wearing Sonic the Hedgehog matching pajama top and pants. It's a case that's grabbed my attention immediately because there's a few red flags. I have just dropped a video on this, so if you are interested, go and check it out. I think this is going to be another one of those cases that is going to break people's hearts, and I think there is a huge story behind this case. So since we are talking about children who have apparently wandered off from their homes, let's get back to Jack and Lily. Now, this video will probably be a kind of a short one, but it's one where I just wanted to think out loud over something that's got me just a little bit confused. And that is whether or not there is phone reception at the house. We were all told quite early on in the case that there was no phone reception at the house. And in fact, we heard on the dispatch calls mention of them not having phone reception. So then when we get Janie talking about phone calls, I just get a little bit confused. So I'm going to go through a few clips that I have, including some dispatch audio, and I just want to share my thoughts on this.
Alright, Bravo 3, go ahead.
Alright, so there is no portable reception down here, however the cars do work, so Constable Mason's vehicle now, she's got her radio on the loud hailer, so she'll be able to hear us. She has no phone reception, but she does have photo of the two kids.
10-4, since radio service is not bad, do you guys want an extended timer there, a 10-6 timer? And I can give you a monitor?
Yeah, definitely. Give us 2 hours, and then ask the risk manager if he wants Constable Mason to depart there to go get some phone service to send those images or not. The drone operator is still on scene with the mom, so...
10-4.
With the service, you can get those photos to him.
So you want her to go get service to send the photos? Yes.
10-4.
So you hear quite clearly there on the dispatch audio, first of all, they refer to it as there being no portable reception, and then they do say there is no phone reception there. And the question is, should Constable Mason depart the scene and find a location where there is phone service so they can send the photo that they have of the children? And of course the instructions there was, yes, please do. So we have first responders who do not have phone reception there at the property. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that when it comes to law enforcement, that they would have the utmost in technology in terms of equipment that's going to pick up a signal if there is a signal nearby to be caught. Now, I'm sure that I also heard from other sources that there was no phone reception on that property. So from day one, I've been thinking, yep, okay, it's isolated, there is no phone reception. Meaning that they would probably have to rely on an internet service provider, and that calls for them would have to be either via a landline, which doesn't appear to be the case, or through an internet service provider on the property, meaning not cell phone calls. So I guess here I do need some clarification from locals. Looking at photos, I'm guessing that the power lines are all underground, they're not above ground power lines, meaning that I guess maybe they do have a landline as well that is below ground. Help me out here, because On one hand, we're hearing that there is no phone reception. And then we have these bits of information coming from Janie where she's talking about phone calls. So I'm going to play through these.
My brother, Ron, called me at 8:48 and asked me if I wanted to go to town with him. And I said no. I said I'm staying home. I said I'm going back to bed.
So here's the thing. If you have issues with phone reception on this property, you have law enforcement who have to go elsewhere to get phone reception so they can send a photo. Now, Janie is saying that her brother rang her at this particular time and that she said, no, I'm going back to bed. Well, when you look at the location of her RV, if you have patchy phone service here, there is no way in hell that that RV is going to get phone reception in that location. So, how? I don't understand. The only thing I can think of is that phone call that she's showing on her phone, just maybe it occurred in a location other than on the property, which opens up a whole other can of worms. You'll notice when you look at the screenshot of her phone that directly above the audio call, you can see that there was a Facebook call prior to that. We don't know what time that was because that's not shown on the screen. So that would make sense because obviously if you are somewhere where you don't have cell phone reception but you have internet reception, then yes, you may probably make phone calls via Facebook to talk to people. But how is it that we have law enforcement unable to make phone calls on that property saying there is no cell reception, and yet we have Janie making a call at 10 to 9 from her RV, which, being situated where it is, right up amongst the trees, right up hard against a steep bank, would have to be the last place on the property that you would get cell phone reception if it is actually patchy reception. So, was Janie on the property at 10 to 9 when she claims that she spoke to her brother and then heard the children? Or was she elsewhere? I mean, you look at that phone, it's not a super expensive fancy phone for starters. To me, it looks like a fairly basic Android phone. Now, regardless of whether or not she was on the property when her brother rang her, here's an issue that I have. So the story is that her brother rang her at 10 to 9 because he was going into town and he wanted to know if she wanted to go with him. And she was like, no, I'm going to bed. Okay, fair enough. But when you look at the screen of her phone here, the same person rang her again at 10:19 and then at 10:30. There was another call at 10:35. We don't know if that was the same person. But whoever rang her at 8:48 then rang her again at 10:19 and at 10:30. If he had rung her to say, do you want to come into town with me, and she said no, then you would expect that he wouldn't ring her again because he would have headed off into town. He would have been doing his own thing. So something about this story does not add up. Either this was not her brother who rang her, it was somebody else, or her brother rang her for another reason. Maybe he was helping Daniel, who knows? But it seems to me that there is a heck of a lot more to this story, and that this whole story of him ringing her because he was going into town doesn't ring true. So my question is, was she actually on the property when she received this phone call at 8:48 a.m? And why, if it was just a quick courtesy call from her brother, would that individual then need to ring her 2 more times after that? There's something definitely more to this story here. When you look at the length of the phone calls, you have a 2 minutes 59 second phone call, you have a 1 minute 2 second phone call, and the phone call underneath, which I'm going to presume was probably that same person again, is 1 minute and 13 seconds at 10:35. These sort of times, especially when you see phone calls that are so close together, to me, they tend to point more towards people trying to coordinate movements. I'm at this location, where are you? Either way, I have serious doubts about her story of having a phone call from her brother at that particular time. If she did, it wasn't about going into town.
My brother, me and Justin were out on the four-wheeler. We were up at the pipeline. We were coming out at the road called the Matheson Road. Malaya called me on my phone. She called me at 3:32. I didn't answer because we were talking to a lady on her four-wheeler with a child. Then she called me back at 5:39. I answered the phone. She told me to get back here to the trailer. I said, "What's up?" She said, "I can't tell you over the phone."
So first thing of note here is that, again, her brother comes into the narrative, but accidentally. She starts saying, "my brother," and then she stops herself and she says that her and Justin were up on the pipeline trail. So I believe that her brother had a bigger role in this than what we actually have realised, and I would like to know what's going on with that. But the other thing here is, once again, we have the narrative of someone phoning from that property. Well, she was on the pipeline trail either with her brother or with Justin, or maybe it's just a completely made up story. And then Malaya rang her and said, "get back here." Now, I could appreciate there probably may be reception up on that pipeline trail if it is higher up, which it seems like it could be, and if it is more open. But again, this goes back to the question of, was there phone reception on the property? If Malaya was outside with people, then we are supposed to presume that she rang her using her mobile phone. Because according to Janie, she wasn't there when this argument on the driveway occurred. But that's where Malaya was when she rang her. So I guess the questions that I have in this video are, first of all, what is the actual story with phone reception? How is it that we can hear law enforcement saying that there's no phone reception on the property, and that their phones, which presumably, like I said, would be good quality phones that are going to get reception if there is reception available, their phones don't get reception, and yet apparently Janie was making a phone call or received a phone call at 10 to 9 on the Friday morning that the children went missing. Is it a coincidence that the phone call before that was a voice call from Facebook? Because that begs the question of, is that how, on that property, is that how they were making their communication with people? Because they didn't have cell reception, so they had to rely on Wi-Fi on the property to make calls, and they were making them using like Facebook or via other apps. And then my other question here is, if this was her brother that rang her at 8:45 or 8:48 that morning, given that we can see it was the same person, why then ring her back at 10:19, at 10:30 and at 10:35? And then why the slip up when she's talking about being up on the pipeline with Justin? Why the slip up first where she starts talking about her brother? I find it really hard to believe anything that Janie has said, but especially when I dig into the things she's saying here about various phone calls and about her location when various phone calls were made, I have questions. And I think those questions are not going to put Janie in a good light. So this was a rather short video, but it's something that's been bugging me for quite some time, and I just needed to get it out of my system, share my thoughts, and see what other people think. So, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button. That'll get this video out into the algorithm, get it seen by more people, and of course, please leave a comment below. I love reading your comments. I know I don't always get around to answering everyone's comments, but I do read your comments and I do appreciate your comments. So go for it. Leave in as many comments as you like. So on that note, thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.